All right, Casey, it is the collaboration that has been long anticipated. And there's that saying, let's give the people what they want. I'm not sure how that goes here because I don't know what you and I have left to give in our tanks. Like I'm feeling a little bit on empty lately. And I'm also not sure what people exactly want out of this. What do you think they want?
Well, it's funny, Brody, because we did these a few times, these collabs, and I worked at ABC and you worked at NBC, and I was always waiting for my boss to come down and hammer on me for doing this because we worked for rival networks, and it didn't happen, but I could tell there was not a lot of enthusiasm about us doing this from our respective companies. And now we're both unemployed, right?
Yeah, well, wait a second. Are you unemployed? Let's clear
I'm
the air on
kidding.
that.
I'm not unemployed.
You have a totally different job that you took. We should get into that. And I know you're open to talking about that, which is great. But you know what? Before we get into any type of real back and forth here, man, I just want to maybe do a statement almost to you and to say thank you for everything you did over all the years of covering the A's. And I say that in past tense. I'm not sure that their story is done, and I don't know that you're on it regularly like you used to be, but what you picked up, and people will say this to me too, but I'm going to steer it away from me and point it at you because you did the harder work, the digging, the sourcing, the interviews. You did all that stuff. I was more of a let's make some sense out of this type guy, but I think what you did, and I think the work that you did over time, it's going to prove to be a legacy that you will leave, the history that you helped at least document in real time. I think it's super important, and I don't know that either of us fully realize that yet, but I think as the years and decades pass, I think the work that you did in the last couple of years, you'll find it even more important and meaningful. So thank you is the first thing I want to say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I right back at you. I know that a lot of it, when this story is over and it's still not over, I'll be able to look back on it someday and pull out all my different colored cell shirts that I've accumulated through the years and just really think about it. But in the moment, it was hard because I just spent so much of my own time, not work time, just literally my personal time, constantly pinging and harassing people and trying to get information and scoops and just figure out what was going on, a lot like you were trying to figure out what was going on. So day to day, in the moment, it's hard to really think about it like that. But when you go back and you think of the different moments, like the reverse boycott day and being on SportsCenter that morning and rushing off to the Coliseum and being in the parking lot and not eating at all till the middle of the game when I had a quick minute, and then just running out to that game went fast, by the way. It just was crazy. So there were so many moments like that, or I think I was on vacation in Southern California visiting family when I just kept breaking story after story after story about their negotiations. And then, coming home and my first day back from vacation, waking up to the alert that they're announcing their Sacramento move and throwing on the suit and bum rushing down there and getting there just in time for the press conference that they clearly didn't want me to be at and things like that. I think I'll look back on fondly and think, wow, that was crazy.
Well, you went above and beyond. And, as I go back in reverse here, maybe this is the healing portion of our conversation. Let's get this out of the way first. None of this was I guess it's a conclusion, at least in Oakland, it feels like a conclusion. None of this is what I expected. And I know Howard Terminal had so many variables, and it was not necessarily shaky from the beginning, but it would have taken a lot to get that done. And the way the A's wanted to do it, all in one swoop, I never thought that was even a possibility. But there were too many backup plans. And I'll tell you, when Dave Kaval penned that letter, was that to the county, right, to purchase their half of the land, and said that the Coliseum was the backup option to assure that the A's had a secondary site so that they would always remain rooted in Oakland. I felt like when that letter came out, 2018, that was the insurance plan. And I always felt like at the very worst, there'd be a new stadium right next to the old Coliseum, and all of this was squared away. So seeing this outcome, I think, was off my radar. It wasn't totally, I shouldn't say off my radar. It was far-fetched. It wasn't as close as obviously it came to us. So I'm still kind of dealing with that. This is not the ending for Oakland that I predicted necessarily.
No, and it's not the ending that Oakland deserved either. And in that letter, it was almost like the Coliseum site was the original parallel path.
Right.
And it was so strange because they wanted that site, and everything they said they needed had to do with that site being in play to develop or be as a backup option. And then it was weird because just out of nowhere, it was like, oh, nope, we don't need it anymore. And then the whole parallel path thing with Vegas came up. And it was just interesting how quickly they pivoted in a way that it was like, we have to have it, we have to have it, we have to, never mind. And it was just so bizarre, right? Like, oh, now all of a sudden you don't need it. And the Coliseum site, we can talk about it, still sort of tied up, and the A's are still a part of that process, but it is moving along. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird how that worked out. But I remember, like, I'm sure you and I talked about this, but Howard Terminal was, it would have been one of the largest developments, like, in the history of California. And it was like, that was the major red flag for me. It's like, you really think these guys are going to be able to pull that off? And so that was kind of one of the things that worried me. Now, I wish they were doing what they are doing in Vegas with Howard Terminal. If it was just a ballpark and then you add the other stuff later, I think they easily could have gotten it done and it would have probably been built by now. But they didn't want to do that. They wanted a ballpark, residential, commercial, all these other things. And then the world changed with the pandemic, and inflation and construction costs skyrocketed, and just, commercial real estate wasn't very useful anymore when everyone was working from home. And, lo and behold, they go to Vegas and all they need is a ballpark on 9 acres. It's like, if you wanted that in the Bay Area, you could have had it, but they didn't, I guess.
Yeah. And you know what? Phases made a lot more sense, which is not something they were interested in. And to the point, I mean, look across the bay, Pac Bell Park was built 25 years in advance of what we're now seeing across McCovey Cove, and, office buildings and residential going up that the Giants are doing. It's their real estate project, but you can't necessarily do $13 billion all at once. That's like a 20-year plan, and I don't think the A's were on board for 20 years. And, the other thing is how close they got. I think a lot of people now, it's easy to point the finger and say, well, this was never going to happen. But how many approvals and an EIR and a BCDC vote? And, I mean, all of the stuff that couldn't have been jumped over, the hurdles that couldn't have been jumped over, they got jumped over. This ultimately at the end came down to preference and decision. There were no main roadblocks to all of this. And so again, walking away makes me wonder, was it a financial thing? Was this always the plan to use Oakland as the bait to set up somewhere else? We'll never know, at least in our lifetime, I don't think, or at least in this decade, we won't know. Maybe someday more truth will come out, but it was interesting how it pivoted away so quickly and without showing a lot of math. That's also something that I will have a hard time digesting in the future, is that in reverse, show me when you tried to make this work and how close you were or how far apart you were. Show me the math. If you show me the math and I can crunch the numbers myself, I'll believe you. But if you say, well, the math is out there, but I can't show it to you, how am I supposed to buy that? I can't.
Yeah, that's one of the things I had a problem with the whole time too. And, you and I were constantly seeking information, still are. But in Oakland, it was like the city had to show their work. They had to show their math. Like the county had to show their work. They had to show their math. The A's never showed theirs.
Yeah.
And they're doing the same thing in Vegas. Every time they come up to one of these meetings, there's another one this week with the stadium authority. It's like, okay, are we finally going to see the information now? Nope, never mind, we're not. And it just keeps happening over and over and over. And I tried to warn people in Vegas all the time that it was down to a development agreement here. Mm-hmm. Everything else had taken place, and we kept going like, where's the DA? Where's the DA? And I asked Cavill like 1,000 times, where is it? When are we going to see it? Like, what's going on? Never saw it. And I think in Vegas, you're seeing something similar play out. Like, they will not show you any information until they absolutely have to. And you may never see it, because we saw what happened here with all the different stadium attempts. And, just yesterday, the letter came out where it's like, oh yeah, trust me, I'm good for it. Sign John Fisher. It's like, no, that's not good enough. You got to show me something here. Like, just saying you're going to pay for it it's just not enough. And so that's my concern with Vegas a little bit. How
about the cost? How about the cost going up real quick in Las Vegas? It's now $1.75 billion. Why do you think that would come out right before maybe the financial private commitments are here? Is this to distract us from something, or why couldn't this have come out, I don't know, 2 months ago? Why didn't this come out 2 weeks from now? It's interesting timing right before something pivotal is about to happen, I don't know, reality is also coming with it. It's interesting timing. I don't know what to make of that yet, but it's interesting.
Probably just they had to finally admit it at this point ahead of the meeting on Thursday. I mean, I could have told you this, and I probably did right here on YouTube. Several times I actually was like, I should go back and look and see what I said about the price of the stadium, because I'd been hearing from sources for a long time that they were over budget on this thing by a decent chunk of money. And I'm still thinking it's going to go even higher.
Yes.
But yes, I had sources telling me a long time ago that they were over budget. So they've known this. This is no surprise. The question is, why now? I guess it's just because they had to actually put out some form of clarity ahead of the Stadium Authority meeting. But, you remember they came in and they promised all these things, both here and in Vegas. They promised a state-of-the-art retractable roof stadium. And then when the renderings finally came out, which they dragged their feet on forever, lo and behold, there's no retractable roof anymore. So you could see the way that the price crunch is hitting them in real time.
I want to steer it back to Oakland and closer to home for us. It was traumatic, the final half of the season, 2024, the final couple months and weeks, and the final game, final home game, the final ever game up in Seattle. Yeah. But I don't know, Casey, that the trauma is over, because this is not like the A's are going away. And it's also not like they're changing their name. At least like in hockey, the Coyotes turned into the Utah Hockey Club. So they're playing their games this year, and it's a lot of the same players, same head coach, same general manager, but they're in a different city with a different name and branding and imaging, and the Coyotes just are dormant. They're inactive technically. They don't exist. The A's are about to go exist, and I say somewhere else, like literally 90 minutes up the road from where we're at here in the Bay. And I think the trauma of fans realizing come March and April and May and June and July, when they drive up and down the Nimitz and look over and see an empty Coliseum, like that's also going to be a traumatic experience. So as much as I think what we've gone through is a hard part, I don't know if it's the last hard part or the ultimate hardest part. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, because I haven't really been a media member the last few months, I haven't really talked about this publicly anywhere, but I went to the Coliseum on the last game, and it was so weird. Like, I was getting ready that morning and I kept like letting out these deep sighs.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I just like, I kept going like, "Oh," and she's like, "What?" It's like the only way I could like, for some reason, cope with the day. I just kept sighing, and I realized that I was like, that's weird. But I think a lot of it was just the emotion hitting me. And I remember driving there and like almost crying. I remember like getting there and almost crying. I remember like going down to the field and collecting all the dirt and almost crying. And then I got really busy, and it was like I just got into the day of it being the last game and doing everything I had to do that day. But it was super emotional. Another one that hit me really weird was I remember going to Ballers opening night at Raimondi Park, and it was just such a beautiful evening. It was just perfect in every way, and the fans showed up, and it was just an awesome day. And it was like experiencing Oakland baseball once again without the soul-crushing greed of billionaires on top of you. And I was driving back, and I drove past the Coliseum on my way out, and I was like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks how like one situation could be so beautiful and uplifting, and how the other could just be so heavy and dark. And it's just, those are the kind of moments where I looked at the Coliseum and was just like heartbroken. And I don't know, it's weird. Like, we talk about it, there's no sense of finality. It's right there in Sacramento if you really want to go watch them play there. I certainly won't. But we still have probably a good 3 to 4 years, maybe 5 of this situation not being resolved, because it's going to take that long for them to build a stadium in Vegas if they ever get a chance to.
Sacramento's got some interesting, I say, advantages in this situation. Nobody expects the A's to stay there, but they could try and at least make a pitch for this. And it's weird how it's being angled, right? The A's aren't even using Sacramento in the name, and they're moving ahead as much as I guess they can in Las Vegas. But I don't know how this Sacramento stay is going to go. I mean, will fans ultimately there see it as the temporary thing? I get the sensation from people I know up there that they view this honestly as a real shot to either keep this team because of misfortune, or because of convincing the right people that they can do this, or because they think that Las Vegas is going to fall apart, or because they think that baseball eventually is going to get to expansion. And if they do this right, we've seen it in other sports. Oklahoma City did it. during Hurricane Katrina. That's kind of how they got the Sonics to move there. They think that this is their tryout. What do you think this is for Sacramento?
Yeah, I think it's a turd sandwich, Brody. And
it's a technical term.
Because what they're doing is, I see why Vivek Ranadive, the Kings owner, would want to do this. Like, it's obvious, he's doing this because
shoot your shot, right?
He thinks he has a chance to show Major League Baseball that Sacramento is a viable market, and it is a viable market. I have nothing against Sacramento in any way. The reason I say it's a turd sandwich, though, is because what you have is the A's showing up to play in a minor league park, a great minor league park, but a minor league park with one of the worst teams in baseball. And they're going to show up in this market. The ticket prices are already insane. I'm sure you saw that when the ticket prices came out. And they're going to say to Sacramento, you guys need to pack this AAA stadium for the worst team in baseball every single night. And if you don't, we won't consider you a big league team, a big league market. And I think that's why it's an unfair situation for Sacramento to be in as a market. I'm sure Vivek Ranadive thinks that this is going to fall apart in Vegas, and that's why he did this. So he can prove that they have the shot, or as he said, put them in pole position when they expand somewhere back to Northern California. Of course, that would make some sense, but I don't know, man. I don't like the way that Major League Baseball treated Oakland. I don't like the way Major League Baseball is treating Sacramento. When I made it to that press conference, and I have a million stories about that day, I was the person that was in the scrum face to face with Vivek, asking all the tough questions and getting answers. And, one of the things I pointed out to him was they're not even putting your city's name in the team name. Like, they're just going to be the Athletics. Like, what a diss to Sacramento. And to think that you're going there to audition for Major League Baseball and they treat you like that, the whole thing just stinks to me.
Well, how about this? Mason Miller, Lawrence Butler, J.P. Sears, Brent Rooker and company. Let's say they get good 2025, 2026, 2027. Let's say they make the playoffs in 2027. Uh-oh. You can't have a playoff game in Sacramento. The A's have basically declared as much to people trying to buy season tickets that playoff games, if they happen, they are not available because they're not playing the games here. What do they do in that situation? I said this to John Shea the other day. It's almost like baseball is going to come to a certain point that they don't want the A's to even mess around and be a good team, even if the baseball team itself could actually turn it around a little bit and build on what they've been doing. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's going to be really tough for them to get free agents to come there, even if they are going to spend money. I mean, it's going to be really tough. One thing that's really good, and I harped on this a lot, and I'm sure you did too, but they're finally coming to their senses and not putting the turf in Sacramento, I believe, which would have just been an absolute nightmare. Like, I can't believe that we spent months talking about this before the players and the MLBPA and anybody even noticed this was going to be a huge problem. It just shows you how much of an afterthought they consider their own players in this relocation. It's just such a mess. And I'm not just talking about the A's, I'm talking about Major League Baseball, right? Like, the fact that they were going to have teams come in the sunniest city of the world and play on turf, and they just thought that was going to be okay, is just wild to me. And so I'm glad they came to their senses. I'm glad they're not doing that anymore. But man, it just tells you how little they think of their own players, that they were going to consider that. I just can't believe it.
For anybody that thinks that you and I are thinking about these things too much, that might be true, but there are other people who are not thinking about these things enough.
And they are a big problem.
They are in important positions. You got the Last Dive Bar shirt on. I have that exact same one, that design for the final day. I have it in white. In fact, I wore it on the last day. I've got all the Last Dive Bar t-shirts. They've been so kind to me. Those are keepsakes for me forever. However, everything else that I accumulated A's related over the years, and I had a lot of it, more than I realized around the house. And it was things that the team gave me, or situation presented, or here, have this. And I went through and purged pretty much everything after the final game, and from October through November. Here we are in December, and I'm still finding things around the house. Casey, I just toss them. I don't really know what else to do with them. There is a box. I did have a keeper box that I put together, and it's up in the attic, but I taped it up, and it's just going to sit there for eternity. And those are the things that I might want to show my son someday. How do you handle the memorabilia, the artifacts? How do you handle the tangible things that, I know you've got a lot of them. I mean, a lot of it's behind you right there. You're keeping them, huh?
Most of this stuff, though, is not really A's related.
Yeah.
Like, I got a Ricky bobblehead back here. It's about it.
Ricky's Ricky. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Battle of the Bay is the Battle of the Bay. It was a moment in time, right? And I think the last dive bar and Oaklandish and all the great like Cell stuff, I think that is in a lot of ways A's adjacent. It's not actual A's or MLB apparel. That's where I draw the line, apparently. You know what's interesting, though, is in 2012, I worked with you at the time, I became A's insider. And as a beat writer for the team, I really had to separate myself from the fandom of the A's I grew up with.
Right.
So really from that point on, I had already, in a sense, purged any and all A's memorabilia. Like I couldn't be caught wearing A's gear, you know, when you're covering the team. So I really didn't have that much of that stuff. And it really did hit a point. Obviously, I covered the A's, but I covered every team. And, you know, when I worked at ABC, and they give you so much stuff like bobbleheads and flags and hats and pins and all these things. And it just got to the point where my wife was like, if you bring any more of that crap home, like I'm going to throw it away. So I really haven't accumulated that much stuff. Like it's rare that I brought home anything. I usually just left it all at work or on my desk at work if I was going to keep it at all. So I really don't have that much to purge, but I'm wondering, did you like make a big bonfire in your backyard and just toss it in there? How did you just threw it in the trash? Like what was the process like?
I thought about that. You know, I thought about even making a video of that said bonfire. You and me are on the same exact wavelength here on this. I thought about there's something about burning stuff would make you feel better. Yes. I didn't actually go that far. I didn't want to have the effort of burning something like on my side yard or whatever. So I just slowly but surely threw it in the trash. And I know my wife sometimes would open up the trash to throw something else in and be like, oh, there's an A's jacket in there. Okay. Like, I know how he's feeling. Or, you know, I wasn't trying to hide the fact that I was doing this. And I'll be honest, there's Stomper stuff in my kids' room and the toy room. And I was like, sorry, I'll be taking this. And this is gone. Like, this is no longer in our house. And I think at some point, like, he's generally aware of what's going on. But I think he kind of caught wind that I was throwing away all the A's stuff because he saw something that he wanted to keep. And he was like, Daddy, can we keep that? And I said, okay, you can keep that.
No, son.
You can keep that. It was good enough for him to keep.
Yeah.
You know, we are 20 plus minutes into this chat, Casey.
How are we already 20 minutes into this?
Well, but here's the thing. I know a lot of people wanted to probably hear you talk about this. I do too. I mean, we've been going back and forth about the new job that you took and the career change. And I guess I can let the cat out of the bag now. As you were considering things a long time ago, I won't even give the date and the time, but we had a phone call, which is rare because I think we text like 99% of the time and talk on the phone 1% of the time. So when you called, I was like, oh, there must be something serious. And we had a long chat about maybe things that you were considering and what you ultimately got into. So jumping out of the TV business, by the way, I also want to make this point later and we can talk about this. I love new media. I was so comfortable in old media, traditional media. That's what we were born and raised on. A lot of security in that area. I'm excited about new media, but you jumped away from old media and Channel 7 and started working for Mayor Sheng Tao. And I know a lot has happened since you took that job, but you know, the one thing I'll start off this chat by saying, I could tell how passionate you were about forget the A's related stuff. You had a good connection with the mayor and you wanted to jump in. You felt like you could help and you felt like you had the right energy and the right assets and the right skill set to help her out. So I just want to say, and you take this wherever you want, I think that when you decided to do the career change, like there wasn't going to be much from me to stop you from doing this. I thought you were very motivated and it was very much a direction you wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different factors at play here. And I think first and foremost, you just get to know people over the course of your career, much like you and I know each other and we've known each other for a long time. And I spent a lot of time talking to the mayor. I spent a lot of time talking to her chief of staff. I spent a lot of time talking to everybody, frankly. But I really just connected with them. They're very good people. I've never really experienced anything like the disconnect between the actual kind of person Mayor Sheng Tao is and the way she's actually portrayed and covered in the media, old media. She's a really kind, nice, easy to talk to, great person. She's super fun to work with, super fun to be around. And honestly, like I saw what was happening with her and the way she was being treated. And obviously I came in after all the things happened, the recall and the FBI raid and all that other stuff. But I really just wanted to show people who she really was as a human and as a person. And I think that we did a really good job doing that. Obviously the cards were very much stacked against us in the situation. It was going to be very tough to win an election. It's really hard to win a straight up and down recall election. Usually when that ends up getting on the ballot, you're cooked. But I did it because I really like her. I really believe in her as a person. There is no way I would have taken this job if I didn't think otherwise. And I just wanted to go in there and help out. And I really also thought that getting out of old media, learning communications, being on the other side, I thought that in doing so in that role at that time would probably give me decades of comms experience over the span of a few months. And it sure has. It's been wild. It's been wild in all the right ways. Like, I do not regret this for a second, even though the election results didn't go our way. I would do it all over again. And I'm sure she would too. I'm sure she would do everything the way that she did it all over again too. So I have no regrets. I'm enjoying every second of it. And it's just like, me, I don't like to be bored. I like to be in the mix and entertained. And first and foremost, and always, I just love Oakland. My family history goes way back there. Like my dad's born there, my grandparents are from there, my great-grandparents, my great-great-great-grandparents. So I've always had a love for Oakland and just really wanted to do what was best for Oakland. And I think that being the chief of comms for the Oakland mayor has been a really, really cool experience. And I get to interact with so many people I never would have otherwise. Like, I rode a bus with the governor, and the senator and the mayor. And, I get to spend time with the police chief and the fire chief. And all these people are just great people that are doing their absolute best for Oakland. And I think that it's really interesting to see sometimes how these people really do work hard and try to do what's right and try to make Oakland a better place. And then they just get crapped on over and over and over for it. And it's a thankless job. And it's interesting to see it from the other side.
So I can say this as somebody unemployed right now. Are you about to be unemployed? What's the situation? I say it with a lot of care and compassion because look where I'm at right now. But what's next for you? Do you even know what's next?
Not really. The truth of the matter is the recall takes place. The county's still counting votes, believe it or not. There's more votes that are going to be released today.
It's December.
I know, it's insane. And then the election gets certified. The date of certification was the same no matter what. It didn't change because of the pace of the count. But December 17th is when the current mayor will have to leave office. At that point, this is where things get wild, is we don't really know who the next mayor is going to be. What we do know is there will be a temporary mayor until a special election, which will be probably around the end of April. So at this point in time, I've agreed to stay on and help whoever the next mayor is, if they want me, because I think it's important to have continuity and let whoever takes over, hit the ground running, because they're only going to have a few months and there's a lot of important things going on in the city right now. So I don't know really what's next for me yet. I've already had a lot of interesting offers pop up, and I know that you and I are the type of people that have so many different skill sets that we're valuable pretty much anywhere we go. So I'm not tremendously worried about it, to be honest. But yeah, you would not believe how many people called or texted or reached out the night after the election, like, oh my gosh, like, what are you going to do now? And it's like, well, really, I might be doing the same thing for like 6 more months. I have no clue. So, I'm just going to kind of ride the wave and see where it takes me.
I would imagine, and I'm just saying this, and I love you, but I would imagine that your joining the city of Oakland has maybe made you view what happened with the A's differently. And I'm thinking, because you're on the inside, maybe you see more of the Oakland side of everything that went down. As you are part of Oakland, and as you now still look at everything in reverse, I mean, well, let's not get into the blame game entirely, but do you see things differently because of your experience with politics now, or do you still see it a lot of the same way that history played out? Look, let's be very clear. It takes two to tango and be at fault here. This was not one side or the other only. How do you see things differently in reverse about the A's since you've been ingrained in Oakland now?
I don't view it any differently because I think that you and I in particular on this story did such a good job of literally knowing everything that was actually taking place. People don't realize this. Like, I talked to the A's a lot, like even when it was adversarial in nature.
Yeah.
We were still in constant communication. And that's part of what made me good at what I did is I still talk to the people on the other side of it. Like,
Right.
when the East Oakland Stadium Alliance was
remember
suing
that.
and doing all these other things, I still talk to them all the time
Right.
too. And so you have to have all these perspectives and you have to be fair to everybody or they won't talk to you.
Right.
And so I really feel like I haven't changed my mind even a tiny bit based on taking this job. And also keep in mind, like, I worked for one mayor. The previous mayor negotiated 90, probably 5% of this deal. And so I still don't think that the city was at fault for a lot of reasons. And you brought this up earlier, and I think this is why I actually do believe they will end up in Las Vegas. It's not them, it's the people they're working with. Like, when the A's got the EIR across the finish line, who did the EIR? It was the city and the
Right.
city staff. The A's
Right.
paid for it, but it was the city that put together that incredible document and got it across the finish line. When the A's got the port approval, who did that? It was the port, right?
Right.
The port was the one that went to bat and got the port priority use area designation. And so in a lot of ways, they were dragged across the finish line in every important way. And I think the same thing's going to happen in Vegas, where the stadium authority, the casinos, all the power players out there that want Major League Baseball, they're going to drag them across that finish line kicking and screaming no matter what they do. So I think they will end up there. Obviously, they still have a ton of hurdles, but in all honesty, it was the city that got them past all these critical points. It was
Right.
really not the A's. Like, remember, the A's dumped this big, like, financial document at one point where they wanted like 2 different, like, tax districts, and they said that it was going to cost like $352 million for the offsite infrastructure. And the city kind of balked at it and said, no, like, we're not going with that plan. We're going to do it our way. We're going to get grants. We're going to get money from the government. We're going to do all these things. If they had done what the A's initial plan was, they'd be so toast right now. Like, you see all the budgetary constraints they have in Oakland at the moment, and frankly, in a lot of major cities post-pandemic, but the estimates were way off in that original report.
Yeah.
Like, it was almost double. So I think that had they gone with the original plan, I think they'd have been in big trouble. So I think that what they did was right. I think what they did was impressive in getting them as close as they did. Keep in mind, they were within $100 million of getting everything they wanted here in Oakland, and they walked, and now you see the stadium ballooning in Vegas, and you
Right.
see the fact that they have no offsite infrastructure, and it's like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense other than they want cheap, fast, easy. That's what they're getting in Vegas. They just need to get it across the finish line and be done.
The one last Oakland topic here is that there was so much groundwork done on Howard Terminal as a potential future for anything, a ballpark, a development. And I know the Port of Oakland has gone back with a request for ideas. They're still interested in doing something there. And the Coliseum, that site is going to be such a blank slate and a clean canvas for anything new there. I guess, and you can take this however you want, my only hope for Oakland is that if this is the end of all the major professional sports, not all sports, but all the major pro sports leagues, that they do something proper and thoughtful and productive with the Coliseum site and with Howard Terminal. Because those two things, if they just sit there dormant and unimproved for the next decade plus, then I think Oakland will have failed. They still have the opportunity to do something great with these locations. What do you think they do? How long does it take? What's the possibility of that? And I know there's a lot of wheels in motion at the Coliseum site already.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't see the NFL coming back.
No.
I think there could possibly be a path for Major League Baseball if certain things happened, but
Yeah.
it's a tiny, tiny percentage of a chance. I think what has to happen at the Coliseum, and they're well on their way to doing it, they're getting closer and closer and closer, despite it taking a little longer than everybody wanted. If AACG can get that site, build what they want to build there, I think it'll be a beautiful thing for Oakland. This is a huge property. It's over 110 acres. It's connected to BART, connected to the train, connected to the freeway.
Right.
It could be a massive, massive hub of development for Oakland. And obviously the arena will still be there, still be in play. And there's a lot of great things happening with that arena. So That would be huge. I actually ran into the executive director of the port, Danny Wan, just the other day, about a week or two ago, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how many like RFPs did you get on Howard Terminal?
Right.
What's going on at Howard Terminal? Like, I know the A's aren't staying, but I still want to know." And they did get a lot of interest from developers at Howard Terminal. One thing that I was pushing, and I keep pushing for, and we'll see if it comes up. I actually know that Lindsey Barons, the president of the Roots, mentioned this the other day. Even a while ago, like they're talking about building that modular stadium at the Malibu site.
Right.
And again, a modular stadium can literally be picked up and moved in pieces elsewhere. It happened in Arizona. I was thinking, why don't you do it at Howard Terminal?
Right.
Like you could put a small modular stadium at Howard Terminal, and all the other things that are still happening on that piece of port property could still happen, like
Right.
the training and the truck repair and the containers storage. Like you could still do all that. Like you don't need the whole piece of Howard Terminal to put a modular stadium there. I think that would be really cool. But they're trying to do it at the Malibu site still, and they're playing next year at the Coliseum, which I actually am so excited for because one thing I have to do, it's like my goal, and I probably text you once a week during Oakland Roots seasons. I got to get you to a Roots game.
I know.
I got to get you to some Ballers games.
I know.
But the Roots games are so awesome, and the fact that they're going to be at the Coliseum next year, I think is going to hit really well for a lot of people that are kind of, by the time the season rolls around, that nostalgia piece, will be kind of missing. You'll want to go back and check out the old Coliseum again and see it with the Oakland Roots. And the same fans that frankly packed the stadium for A's games will be really special. And obviously the Ballers at Raimondi Park, I'm just so excited and so thrilled and just so happy with everything they've built there. And actually tonight I'm going to MC a town hall where they're going to elect a fan investor board member. And I think it's really cool the way that they're bringing in the fans and the community to be a part of the team. And so, yeah, man, I really love everything happening with the Roots. I really love everything happening with the Ballers. And I know that was a long tangent when you just asked me about Howard Terminal and the Coliseum, but those are two big pieces. Like the Roots maybe could go to Howard Terminal. They will be at the Coliseum. Maybe now that the A's are gone, the Ballers could play a special event at the Coliseum. So I still think there's a lot to enjoy sports-wise, and it's always been about the people, not the teams anyways. Like what made it fun, what made it special was the moments you experienced with your family, your dad, with your son and wife, like the things that you did in the stands at the Coliseum, in addition to the games that brought us there.
And I don't think it all even has to be sports related with those two sites, though. I mean, I know that's our first inclination. That's just kind of who we are, but just do something productive. It could be a great park. It could be a bunch of housing that makes sense, or something attractive for the communities, obviously surrounding the Coliseum and more close to downtown and Jack London Square with Howard Terminal. Those are prime properties. Just do something with them. Now that people have talked about it and a primary tenant has come and gone, make it enticing for somebody else to do something there. Shout out to Draymond Green, who, by the way, I think is going to be out the next month with an injury. I just saw it on social this morning, but I don't know that he coins the phrase new media, but he uses it a lot.
Yes, he does.
We're very familiar with old media. Like I said before, I really wanted to get into this, and maybe this is how we start to wrap it up. But, it's what you and I were raised on in getting into our careers and working for, proper television stations with call letters and everything. And it doesn't seem like that's necessarily the future for sports media, for a lot of media. Now there's new media, which we're doing right now on YouTube. Like YouTube has blown me away, Casey. And I know somebody reached out to me recently. I won't mention the name.
Yes.
We're not name dropping here like that. But there are so many people out there that you would never even expect are watching, or the quantity of people that you would expect are watching videos here on YouTube or other social platforms. I'm so excited about new media. It offers so many opportunities and less commercial breaks and more flexibility and creative freedoms. But it's a little bit uncomfortable, right? When you're going away from anything you've known for such a long time. So I think we both see it the same way. Excited, but curious, a little bit nervous. And I can't wait until we're another 5 years down the road and new media is less new,
Yeah, well, the thing that made you and I different, though, is we embraced new media, even though we were old media.
Right.
Right. What a lot of the other people did was scoff at it.
Right.
They didn't want to get involved in social media. They didn't want to get involved in YouTube. They didn't want to get involved in Instagram and all the other things. And I think you and I always embraced it, and really were excited by the opportunities it presented. And so I think that even though we were old media, we were very much new media in thinking, even ahead of our time. And that will continue. I've obviously paused my YouTube. I actually never really addressed this, and maybe this is a good place to do it.
Say it right here, right now. Yeah.
I wanted to sit down and record a video when I accepted the new job. And then it just got so busy. Like I had to hit the ground sprinting, and I didn't want to like leave people in a lurch, but I just felt like if I'm chief of communications for the Oakland mayor, I'm like the spokesperson for the mayor, and I don't want to sit here and spout off opinions that are mine and then have them be perceived as coming from the mayor's office. So I felt like it was just not my place to sit here and do what I was doing before, even though I still follow it just as closely.
Sure.
And I still talk to all the people I was talking to. I just didn't feel like it was my place to sit here and do this and pontificate when my words could be used as the mayor's words, like, or twisted. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And so I paused my YouTube channel, but I did pick up a nice live streaming service, and I plan to bring it back in the near future. So I'll be back. I'll be back, everybody. Sorry I haven't posted in a while, but I will be back, I promise. And so, yeah, it was a little bit different for us, but we did hit the new media thing, and we continue to. And I think that it's the wave of the future, because you don't have to be like an on-air anchor anymore. Like you don't have to be employed or hired by some affiliate anymore to be able to broadcast. Like literally anybody with a webcam can sit down and do what we're doing right now. And literally anybody can sit down and offer their opinions on social media. There's no gatekeepers anymore. And I think that's both good and bad sometimes, but everybody has the opportunity to participate in, like Draymond always says, new media. So I think that this is a good thing, and I think that we'll continue to do it.
See, but I also think that we were lucky enough to be from a time where old media was the thing, and it was the only thing. And because of that, production value, how to tell a story, how to be responsible, how to be accurate, how to try and do this the, quote, right way. I'm not fearful to say, oh, the kids are going to be irresponsible with this. But I don't know what YouTube looks like in 20 years. My point is, as much as we are kind of treading carefully, jumping into the new pool, or maybe the hot tub from the pool, I think you and I were lucky to have that experience. And although we're unlucky to maybe have to transition in the middle of our lives and careers into other things, we're lucky that we at least maybe learn things and learn the foundations of, production, and all this stuff carries over, right? I mean, if you're going to do a YouTube channel, to your point though, you could do it with a phone and a webcam, but you could also do it the right way too, and make it look and sound like it's supposed to. And I know you put a lot of effort into that too. So.
Yeah, one thing I won't do in any video, I just absolutely refuse, is to have the jump cuts that you see in all the other videos.
Every sentence is a jump cut, yeah.
Just the editor in me will not allow it. So when I sit down and do a video, I literally sit down and do it all in one take, no script. I just go. And if I do really screw something up and have to edit it, I will B-roll it. I will not allow any jump cuts in my videos. But that's just because I came from a different way of thinking. And what's funny is now, like, I'll go on Threads sometimes, and there's all these like video content creator like people that talk about how to do videos and like what to do and not to do. And now all of them are talking about like doing all the old media ways, like, covering your jump cuts and not going too fast and doing all these things that were like kind of how we were doing it, because we were a little more old school, but now it's like being picked up as it's harder, but it's a lot more polished. And so I think that that's just the way we were trained. But we were also trained as editors and photographers and hosts and broadcasters and reporters. So we kind of learned all this throughout our careers. I wouldn't fault anybody that didn't know all that stuff and is just picking up a phone or webcam for the first time. But I do like the more polished approach, and I'll stick to that.
The one thing I've had to really work hard at, Casey, is trying to get rid of my broadcast voice when I talk to somebody like you here on YouTube. You really don't want to come off like a freaking robot. Seriously though, that for all the years of tracking a package, you know what I'm talking about, where, today the A's beat the Mariners 5-3. It's all that inflection in your voice. I've had to work so hard to get away from speaking like that into a microphone, like just talk to you like I normally would. That's my goal in all of this. So you got to kind of break free of some old media things, but I do think there's a lot to bring from old media to new media. So here's how I want to wrap it up. And we talked about maybe like what's next, and I don't know for me at this point exactly where this is going to go. I know you have a lot of question marks in your personal and professional life. What do you want to do with the A's situation? Do we we both just let this go? I get a lot of comments here on this YouTube channel from some people who are like, dude, it's over for Oakland. Like, you're just beating a dead horse. And like, this is a story that's not complete. This is like watching a baseball game, even though the other team took the lead. This is like not watching it until the final out. So why would I stop what I'm doing right now? I cover it a lot less. I certainly care about it a lot less, having, you know, less to gain from it, or less connections to it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like this stuff's not happening. We're talking about it. I'm making a video about, you know, the A's in Las Vegas and Sacramento. How much do you see yourself covering this anymore, or being a part of the whole process?
I think until it's over, you know, especially until shovels are in the ground at the very least in Vegas,
Right.
You have to keep following it. This is a story. It continues to be a story, good or bad. It's still something that is going on that has a major impact in Major League Baseball,
Right.
a major impact in a lot of people's lives growing up A's fans and growing up like with the love of green and gold in Oakland. I think it's still very much a story. Now you have to remember, you know, this is why I don't tweet that much about like politics on my Twitter account, despite the fact I work in politics now, because everybody that follows me on there is following me for A's stuff and baseball stuff and sports stuff. So I'm not going to like force feed them something they don't want.
Right.
And that's very much like your YouTube channel and mine too, is every now and then you'll get the troll comments like, it's over, stop talking about it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, but like that's like one person,
Right.
and maybe 5 people,
Right.
whoever in the comments, whereas thousands and thousands and thousands of people are
Have
following
viewed it
for
and
that
enjoyed
very
it.
subject.
Exactly.
And want to hear more about it. And crazy, but like the more granular you get on things, the more people like it. Like
Right.
I could sit here and talk about the 49ers and the Warriors and the Sharks and the Raiders and everything else because I follow all that stuff too. But no one wants to hear my opinion about that stuff, really. So like the more granular you get on a subject, the more people are invested because they want to go to you. They want you to be the person telling them what is important because you're following it closer and talking to more people than anybody else. And so I found that to be a really interesting thing about new media. You know, obviously the Niners are far more popular than the A's, but if I just sat here and talked about the 49ers, I don't think anybody would like it. So I stick to what I like to stick to, and I will cover this till the end. I will ask you this, and this is a funny way to end maybe, but
Yeah.
when I went to Sacramento that day, you know, the A's put out a press release for a press conference. They gave us literally not enough time for any Bay Area media member to make it on time. I had managed to make it on time. I had someone save me a seat front and center.
Yep.
Afterwards, to their credit, and you know what, like, I give the A's a lot of credit for lots of things, right? Like, I'm not sitting here just bashing them just for everything. Like, Cavill was there. Fisher literally ran out before anybody could talk to him, but Dave stuck around and he went up to a suite with the entire A's front office, and they called me and said, come on up, like, let's talk. So I went up there and I talked to him for a long time. Like, you see a lot of the stuff on YouTube. It was on ABC 10 and ABC 7 and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But afterwards, as I was walking out, and this is where my question's going in a long-winded way, a bunch of the front office people were standing there by the door as I was leaving. They're like, all right, so you're going to come visit us in Sacramento, right? And I was like, nope. And they're like, oh, okay. Are you going to come visit us in Vegas? And I said, literally, I said this. I said, you could not pay me enough money to go to Las Vegas. And then I walked out the door. Everyone's like, oh, okay. But really, I don't foresee any situation that brings me to going to an A's game in Sacramento in any way unless I'm literally working and I have to do it. How do you feel about the Sacramento A's?
Exact same way. And I'm not trying to copy your answer, but I think I have to separate it first off by saying personally, like, will I watch any games this summer? No. And that's so weird because that team at the end of last year, if I just look at the Mason Millers and the Lawrence Butlers and the Brent Rookers and a lot of players that I started to gravitate towards and the Zach Geloffs, I'm like, I like those players. Casey was such a shame. This was a team that I would have liked. The players that are starting to form all over again. But I kind of had to write it off and just say, this is something that I'm going to cut myself off from. I'm just going to give up on it. Yeah, no, I personally have no interest. To your point, if professionally it's a situation I land in and that's part of my responsibilities and part of the job, of course I'll do it. I'm also here on this YouTube channel still following just the overall situation, but I've kind of made it a thing here on this channel to cover a lot of interesting sports teams and situations, and relocation is a huge part of it. Uncertainty is a huge part of it. The business of sports is part of what I do here on YouTube now. So because I've diversified, it still kind of falls in the net of things I'll cover. So I will talk about it here on YouTube. I will still follow the A's story. There's too many people that are interested in just kind of seeing how it goes. It's almost like you see a car driving erratically, and you don't just like say, okay, well, that was interesting. You kind of figure out, where did that car go? Did it turn the corner and fall off the cliff? Like you have to have some type of closure. At least I do personally. So I'm kind of curious to see how this all shakes out. So I will still follow it. But if you're asking me, will I watch a game for the A's in Sacramento? No. Will I go to a game on my own will, on my own personal time? Absolutely not. I can find a lot better things to do in the summer months. And yeah, I'm just kind of done with all that. You know, I really am. I think it's probably something that if I wasn't professionally tied to it for the last couple of years, I would have personally given up on it a long time ago. And that's why I don't fault people who, you know, when I met them in person in 2021, 22, 23, 24, and they said, I used to be an A's fan, but I'm not anymore. You know, the natural instinct is to try and talk them back into it and to still be connected with them. But over time, I just realized, you know what, you gotta let them go. And I would have let myself go a long time earlier. So I don't see it happening, man. And to your point, when somebody asks me, like, well, two things. The initial question used to be, when I was still working for NBC, is, are you going to follow the team? Are you going to move to Vegas? And it's no knock against Las Vegas, and it's no knock against Sacramento, but I'm just a Bay Area person. This is where I'm from. This is my home. Sorry, like, I don't care really what this is. It would have to be so enticing, so lucrative that I couldn't say no, that I would go move somewhere else. It's no offense to those places. It's just, this is me, where I'm from, where I'm at. I'm not moving. I've made that choice a long time ago. Look at my career. I mean, in a sense that I've never explored other options to go anywhere else. So when people say, would you going to move to work for the team, continue to do that? Absolutely not, number one. And then the other one, you know, is, hey, you're going to go up and watch some games? And somebody suggested, like, yeah, you should come up, and it'll be healing for you to come watch an A's game in Sacramento. It's still the baseball team that you love. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. When you get divorced, I don't think you continue typically to go out to dinner with your ex. You just don't. You cut it off. That's the end, you know? So that's where I stand.
Yeah, like, I'll go to Sacramento to watch a Kings game. Like, I love Golden One Center. But I'm certainly not going to watch an A's game. And I think that what you said was really important, and we can end on this if you want, but I think Sacramento is an amazing market, and I think it could be an MLB market. And what they did to save the Kings and the Kings franchise there, I think is spectacular. I'm excited about what they have cooking with the MLS. I'm actually, you know, I'm not super against Vegas either. Like, I went out there for the Super Bowl, and I talked to a lot of people out in Vegas throughout this process. And I've always said, I think Vegas would be an awesome major league sports market as well. Already is for NHL, already is for NFL, going to be soon for NBA. I think MLB absolutely should be there. I just don't think it should be there like this.
Right.
So I don't want people to misconstrue, and sometimes they do, what we say.
Right.
Like, I have nothing against Sacramento. I have nothing against Vegas. I just don't like the way this situation played out for the A's in those markets. That's it. Mad love for Sacramento, mad love for that ballpark. I used to cover the A's there when the A's were the Rivercats, or the Rivercats were the A's affiliate. And so many of my favorite moments covering the A's actually happened at Sutter Health Park when it was called Raley Field. And so I have a lot of love for that market. I have a lot of love for that ballpark, a lot of love for that community. I just think they deserve better. And so does Vegas.
It's not like you or I had the ability to change anything that was going on. We were just here to document it and to cover it and to talk about it and to put it in the conversation in the light of the national media. I think we largely accomplished all the things we were trying to do. But I also think that somewhere down the road, history is going to prove maybe some of the things we said to be even more accurate, or we saw them a lot sooner than other people. And I think that's why we are at least continuing on this, because Sacramento and Las Vegas has this this ignorance, and it's not their fault, but they're kind of new to these situations and these operations. And you know what, even I'll tell you this right now, people in Tampa right now, I should say St. Pete, but people in St. Petersburg, they don't know what's about to hit them in terms of, well, we can't get our stadium fixed. You don't want to build our new stadium. We're moving to Orlando. or Nashville or wherever. So I guess the point is, you know, we're trying to use our experience and what we've just gone through to maybe help other people. And if this were any other situation in life, you're kind of a hero for, you know, for sharing what you've been through. But in this case, some people just don't want to hear it. So that's kind of how I see it. So I think
there's a playbook here, and it's being run to a T.
Yeah.
And it's happening in a whole bunch of other markets. And again, the story's not over. So I know we feel like there's a lot of finality to our conversation right now. It's not. We'll continue talking all the time. We'll probably do more of these videos talking about other things. But I still think there's a lot of twists and turns left in this saga. It's not over yet. And whether it's over for Oakland or not, that's one thing. But the A's story and where they end up and how they do it and what they end up doing, it's all still going. So we'll keep following.
You can find us pretty easily. Thank you, Casey. I wish you the best of luck. Happy holidays. And yeah, we will definitely do this again.
All right. We're going to at least one Roots game together and at least one Ballers game together next year. Maybe even on the same day. Get a little doubleheader action. Get a Soul game in there too.
Sign me up. As of right now, my schedule wide open.